Welcome to the Global Spark,
a podcast for LGBTI plus youth who want to become more aware of advocacy strategies and initiate projects within their own communities to create LGBTI plus freedom.
So, hello, I'm Jorge, originally from Mexico City. I use the pronouns he, they indistinctly. You can also use my name as my pronoun, and I am a grad student at NYU, so I am living in New York City. And I am also the director of research here at the Global Center, and I'm here with my co host, Kai. How are you today, Kai?
Hello, good morning. So excited to be here with you today, Jorge. I'm doing really well, and I'm very excited for our episode today. And my name is Kai. Pronouns are they, them. I'm located in San Diego, and I'm the COO of the Global Center.
Thank you. So, the Global Center is launching this podcast, and this is our second episode. Last month, we were speaking with Andy about the importance of pronouns, which is a topic very related to what we are going to be discussing today with our new invitee, Nada, who is a member of our board of directors. Welcome, Nada Chaiyajit. Thanks for accepting the invitation to participate in this podcast.
Yes, hello everyone. And hello, distinguished audience. And thank you for Jorge and Kai to having me here today. And I'm glad to be here to represent an intersex and trans community in Thailand. And I hope the story I'm telling you today would fulfill and inspire, and also to introduce people who follow this podcast to understand the situation about my work in Thailand better. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nada, for taking the time to be here. But before we initiate with this topic, we would like to share our latest weekly Queer Digest, which is an initiative of our media unit where we gather the top queer news and stories from around the world for your knowledge and action. This week was defined by bans and attacks against LGBTI plus people and rights throughout the world. In China, an influential LGBT advocacy group that has spearheaded many of the legal cases pushing for greater rights halted its work amid growing restrictions on social activism. In Bulgaria, a group of people led by a far-right nationalist presidential candidate stormed the Rainbow Hub LGBT Community Center during a trans community event. In Russia, authorities named a prominent LGBT rights group and several lawyers as foreign agents, continuing a months-long crackdown on activists, opposition supporters, and independent media. And in the United Kingdom, the BBC quit Stonewall's LGBTQ diversity program over impartiality concerns. In the United States, San Diego became the fifth US city to ban the use of gendered pronouns in the future city laws and policies. The governor of Oklahoma ordered an end to non-binary birth certificates, and a trans teen sued Tennessee over its school sports bans. In Indiana, trans boys sued their school district over its bathroom ban, and conservatives pushed for audits of school libraries as they labeled LGBT-inclusive library books sexually explicit material. With this sobering news, we must reaffirm our innate human rights to non-discrimination, freedom from violence, and the right to an inclusive education. The Global Center stands united with you and the week ahead in our joint efforts of creating freedom.
Nice. Thank you very much, Kai, for sharing the weekly Queer Digest. And now our topic. Well, today we are commemorating a very important day for us at the Global Center. It is a day to honor and remember trans people who have lost their lives, mainly due to gender-based violence and the harsh perspective on gender identities and expressions that differ from the binary gender system, which is dividing societies in men and women and is falling short in recognizing the wide variety of identities that are inside, between, and around solely being a man or a woman, which is the case of trans and non binary people. who are often facing violent situations that may impact our lives and our well-being. And we're very fortunate to have Nada, our board member, join us today for this discussion. Nada is the Human Rights Campaign Advisor at Manusia Foundation and serves as the LGBTI focal point of the Thai BHR network and Thai CSO's coalition for the UPR. She also acts as a senior advisor on law, human rights, and equality to the board of RSAT, or Rainbow Sky Association of Thailand. Nada strongly believes in community empowerment for achieving social justice and has worked as a transgender rights activist since 2006. Her experience and expertise in the human rights field include LGBTI rights, of course, gender equality, business and human rights, sexual health and media advocacy at national and international levels. In 2019, she was awarded the Chevening Scholarship, wow, of the UK government and holds an LLM in International Human Rights Law from the Faculty of Law at the University of Essex, UK. Prior to her master's degree, she worked as a capacity building coordinator at Manusia Foundation. She served as the SOGI project coordinator for the World Bank Group and as a national consultant on legal gender recognition for the United Nations Development Program, being LGBTI in Asia initiative. So welcome, Nada. Thank you very much for being here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into our conversation. So can you tell us, Nada, how did Transgender Day of Remembrance, what we're commemorating today, how did it start? And is it something that was institutional or community-led?
Well, turn back about the history of Transgender Day of Remembrance. This is what the topic is, right? In Thailand, actually, there's no Transgender Day of Remembrance before. We adopt by community-led, like follow the international movement. Because there we also having our trans community member experience like sexual harassment and we lost some friends in the past because of like the transphobic murderer, and that is how we started. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember. If you can wait for me to just, I kind of like, as I remember the TD, we started TDOR, the Transgender Day of Remembrance in Thailand back to quite a long time ago. I have to calculate because in Thai we don't use like. We have different years to count the system. Let me calculate. Yeah, back in 2010, but it's not constitutional or like promoted by the government. It's all about like civil society organization and trans community gathered together to promote this day. Yes. So that's the answer.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think that every country like remembers this day at its own pace, no? That it is something that governments, institutions, societies are starting to realize, and they are starting to, implement activities to integrate these into their culture and into their activities. So it is very interesting to know like how it is being lived in Thailand. And well, I am a person that is usually looking at the way in which, institutions or the main elements defining our social systems, such as, for example, the education system, are influencing societies, no? Public policies, how they are influencing our living standards as a whole. So what do you understand by structural violence? What is the main structural violence that trans people face?
Well, oh my God, it's just a big questions when like we were talking about structural oppressions, based on like our gender identity and gender expressions. We have to accept that in Thailand, like the global movement has influenced us, to follow what is called international standard. So when it's come to harassment, we consider it a form of, like direct and indirect mental and physical harms against us because of who we are. So in Thailand, for example, we don't have any in terms of like constitution, like at the constitutional level, we don't have any like articles specified or to talk about or what is like harassment and violence against us, but they talk about the protection of our human dignity, which is the current constitution addressed in the Article 4. And in the Article 4, the protection of human dignity also include like the individual dignity regarding like the difference of the genders. So and also it's in line with the Article 27 of Thailand Constitutional. We're talking about like the equality before the law, the non-discrimination. For me, when we capture the idea around violence against LGBTIQ in general, or for example, for me and as trans persons, as intersex person, specifically, we have to look at what is a fundamental like human rights standard. In Thailand, we have it in line, integrated, within the constitutional, but in reality, like when you're talking about like what is the highest in terms of like legal hierarchy to protect people, right, to ensure that everyone shall have like a peaceful life, and where they physical and mental are protected by the law and by the social acceptance. But in reality, it's not the case for Thai context, And I know that in many contexts, globally, when we talk about violence, we understood in the legal perspective that okay, if men do harm women, that's in the legal term we call mala inse. It's like by its action is against the law. The action is actually illegal by itself. But can you imagine that society when we look back at the in history, throw back a time where punishment LGBT is something to do, because being LGBTIQ plus people were against the natural will. We're supposed to be born and like our mental and physically should be harmonized, and so we're supposed to be cis persons, and we're supposed to be we're supposed to have like heterosexuality, for example. So having receiving punishment is something we in the society they believe that we deserved. So we are now at the momentum that we are trying to reverse this scenario, right? We are reversing this narrative, right? By applying international human rights standards. So we believe that everyone shall enjoy the right to be themselves and to be safe and to be protected by the law regarding of our like socioeconomic status, as people keep saying that. But it's not an easy thing to do, to entirely change the way like the action, the violence against people like us that used to be something legal, and nowadays it turned upside down, right? Violence against people regarding toward their sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex expression, and even with sex characteristics is now considered illegal and violate their human rights. So for me, it is how we can construct this framework and generate, and disseminate into society to understand that we just have different identifications, or we have our own free will to love someone, and it's not fit into like traditional norms. It doesn't mean we are different, and it means that we are still need to be protected from any like violence against who we are. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a very illustrative example. And I like the approach when you mentioned the legal framework and which rights and policies are there available for us to use them, right? To demand better conditions for trans people, to address some of the structural or systemic violences.
Yes. So for
yeah,
me,
thank you.
it is quite interesting because we are now changing the narrative of the history. Like especially in Thailand, we just have Thailand just enacted Gender Equality Act since 2015. Now it's 2021, so it's just 6 years that we have to advocate this law for people to understand that like there is no, the door to violence is over, it's closed, it's permanently closed, but how can it be possible to change entirely like national mindset? Like, like where they believe that it's okay to discriminate you, to violence you, like to do harm you because you abnormal, you born differently, like you are not follow like what the traditional or like heteronormativity norms said, yet what who you should be, on how you should express. So that is quite interesting for me here in Thailand. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it can all be reduced to like our individual approaches, right? Like how do we respect our own immediate circle, right? Like how do we use language even to visibilize and address this topic?
And so Nada, from what I hear is that there are legal protections that exist to protect trans people, members of the LGBT community. But what are challenges? What are those invisible violences that trans people, that non-binary people, that LGBTI plus people might face on a day-to-day basis? Because, I mean, we all know that everyone calls Thailand this paradise, but we know it's not. We know it's not a paradise for LGBTI people. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the paradise is the major propaganda that government and Thai society in general trying to to use as the excuse to not allow us to enjoy our human rights. Why I'm saying that, because so far we only have like gender equality provision to protect us turned back 6 years ago, and in order to entirely change the law, like the other laws that discriminates the people based on their gender or do harm, it still need a lot of works, and which government pay attention less than other things. First of struggle I would mention is about when we try to promote or to expand the coverage in terms of protections to protect trans and non-binary identity. People keep saying no. Why government pay attention on this thing, and this is about their life, is about it is about lifestyle. Being gay, being trans, being non-binary is about lifestyle. Is their personal thing. It's not related to like the public policy related to like access to work. They don't think it is the same thing. They have no idea like or they have no idea that we experience like exclusion when it comes to access to work, because business sector keep denying to accept trans and non-binary like vacancy, the job application. Mostly when they found out that we are trans or non-binary, or who looks differently, right, who look like, oh my god, you look too sissy, but your document said you are Mr., for example, and then those applications had been rejected, for example. And the recent case, I got I got an emergency call for effort from a trans person, where when she applied to the job advocacy, like the job advertisement, and then when she applied, and then the HR called her and said that is it possible for her to cut her hair and ensure that she dress and express herself or follow her sex assigned at birth, in order to just to have opportunity for job interview. We are not talking about the opportunity to pass and get like a full-time job. And this is what we experience in daily basis. I'm not talking about some situation like recent case as well, where the hate crime against trans and gender non-conforming or like non-binary people. Like 3 days ago, there was a transgender who she ran her own mini food corner, and out of nowhere there was like a policeman, came with, and then he drunk, and then he just like kicked her face and said that I hate transgender in Thai. Luckily that in that area there was a CCTV camera, so it record even not just an image, but it record the voice also, so we hear everything. So that's thing happening in Thailand, and when people all come to Thailand, you can dress whatever you want. You can go to sauna, and you can go to gay bar, and then we have cabaret shows, and these things represents the paradise of Thai people, of LGBTQ community for decades. And then we talk about, no, we are not living, we're living in hell, not the paradise, and nobody listened and nobody trust that it's true. So for me, working with the mindset and this propaganda is one of the most challenging that I would like to end first. It frozens the LGBTIQ human rights movement for so long. So if we can unfreeze, and then we can see the reality on the ground, then we can start from that point.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for giving us a picture of the real Thailand and not what we see, the propaganda that we see that entices us as US citizens, as foreigners, to travel to Thailand because, to get this experience. But in reality, that wouldn't be the experience of people living there, LGBTI people living there.
I'm sorry. Too much work, sorry. Can you repeat?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I just thank you for sharing what the reality is like on the ground in Thailand, because there is that propaganda that exists that entices, people from the United States and people from Western countries to come to Thailand, to experience this paradise. But in reality, people who are in the LGBTI community really don't experience this quote unquote paradise that Thailand government sells.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Even like we has been named as the global hub for sex reassignment surgery, or nowadays we call gender affirming surgery, right? Every single transgender who passed this process still remain, the official document still remained as they received since their birth assigned. So it means nobody can change anything, even including me as well. I still hold my passport as Mr. Nada.
Wow.
My gender marker is still M. So this I think this is ridiculous. So nothing else I can say in terms of like if government asks me to help promote the tourism industry in Thailand. If you can Google go Thai be free, and you will see the most beautiful tourism's inclusive production to promote for like all tourists, global tourists to come to Thailand to be free. Why people in the countries, the citizens still cannot even reach to the point that what the freedom means, you know. Yes.
That's very interesting. Yeah, we have a similar scenario in Mexico that the diversity of gender identities and expressions is even rooted in our culture. We have a community in Oaxaca, which is a place with a very beautiful beach in Mexico, in which there is like there are identities that are differentiated from the binary system, and that is something that has been going on for many, and they are still facing discrimination and all of these violent situations that we've been speaking today. So I think that regardless our cultural backgrounds, governments have been very have had a very harsh approach on these topics, but institutions are nowadays starting to realize that, as you mentioned on the passport example, the US just announced this measure in which a third option could be chosen for gender in the passports. And this is something very new, right? Even though it's been demanded by civil society and other groups. So I believe that institutions are just initiating a path in which they are recognizing our situations and our identities and our rights. And of all of the examples that you've mentioned are only showing the necessity to take action and to prevent and address these situations through the various mechanisms we have available, as you mentioned, right? The passport is only a way in which we can affirm our identity, right? And use
Yes,
a document to prove
yes,
it.
and allow
Yeah.
us to travel freely, where our identity remain protected. That's what I mean. When I enter United States, for example, or I enter some country in Europe, so my passport's always like an issues. I will receive long questions regarding of my physical appearance is not which is not matched to what my passport, the gender marker and the name title in issue in my passport. So it might relate to like is you the real person, is this a fake passport, that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's the human rights, that's the
Yeah.
basic rights there.
Mhm. And we don't need a document to be who we are, but of course it makes our lives easier within the whole procedures and administration requirements, right? In the systems that we're living in.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Here at the Global Center, we've been focusing on the education system, right? And
Yep.
seeking to build awareness about LGBTI people and to build capacity with educators. And I mean, we have directed activities to other stakeholders and to other key actors, but we've been focusing on teachers, no? On students, on employers at education institutions. So what are ways in which we, friends or teachers or colleagues at schools, can protect trans folks?
Well, when I work with the policymaker, lawmakers, I work with the civil servants, but I always believe that to entirely change this system, this toxic system, it should start at the educational level, right? So I'm not talking only about like the educational in school, like we receive the primary education, you know, from our parents, right? It's also about like the family unit. The second step to working to the second step to ensure that you know, like we grow up in a safe space is in the educational system. We're talking about the safe space for LGBTIQ student in school, and absolutely it is impossible. It is the most challenging as well, because in Thailand, for example, where school there is the social institution with the purpose of like they have the job description to groom people and grow up to believe that they should act and they should work, or there should be a person, you know, that continue to contribute, you know, for like economic social and economic inclusion, you know, like to contribute into our economic empowerment, that kind of thing. And one of the key elements that they believe that people that we have the young generation grew up and being you know, in order to contribute successfully in these elements of society, they have to be cis person and they have to be straight. So that's why in our in Thailand's education curriculum, we still have like some we still have like the books, the subject books that taught people to be aware of having like making friends or having gay or like trans student as classmate, you know. Don't and we have to be aware, because this group of people are a part of abnormality society, that kind of thing. Still, you know, we were able to change the curriculum within the publications office, you know, like both private and public publication office, but we were success to entirely change the curriculum. But the problem is we are not able to change the national curriculums yet, because by the law it said that it should be reformed or amended within 10 years. We are now at the end of the term, and we are about to pursue government to let them entirely change, you know, the national core curriculum to follow what we have success turned back like 4 years ago. So the point is because even we changed and we announced the new curriculum teaching about sex education in Thai school, whether public or private, we still faced the challenge because teacher, they don't have knowledge about SOGSC, sexual comprehensive sexual education need a proper training, right? As a global center, you all know that training is needed, you know, because how can we change or you insert the new idea about gender equalities or inclusive sexual education with the teachers who been taught about being LGBTI is abnormal for like 1,000 years ago, for example. So it is quite challenged for us to kick off as well. But we are not start from the scratch. We already have the actual like textbook change, but we need to ensure that teacher has to follow the content in the books, right? You are not allowed to teach follow your bias. You allowed only to teach follow the curriculum, so we can ensure that our children's, our like minors and students will grow up with the mindset to respect others difference, if they are differences from who they are, you know. That's what I mean.
Well, but congrats. I mean, I think that changing the education curricula is a great step, and it is a process in which we can deliver other strategies at schools that may facilitate the implementation of that curricula. So yeah, I think we're in the good direction. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm love to give example because I think it's help people understand better, and especially this is a podcast. Sometimes talking about concept, and I think people who follow our podcast will somehow are having a basic understanding about gender equality at some point. So giving an example from where I come from or where I'm living might give them an idea how hard to be LGBTIQ plus in this country where people believe everything is fine and reality is not.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nada, for sharing your experience, your knowledge with us, and the context of Thailand. I mean, one thing that I take away in your final statements of where um, respect starts from and starts, where we start learning concept of respect, respecting other people around us is in the classroom and at home. And it's so important that we work with educators. Not only, I mean, the big step, it's amazing that Thailand has changed the curriculum, but if the teachers are not going to implement the curriculum, if they don't understand themselves, that's really a big next step. A big challenge for Thailand is to educate their
Yeah,
teachers so they can
yeah,
support and implement the
yes,
curriculum correctly, and that they
yes.
can create these safe spaces for LGBTI plus youth and in their schools, and then hopefully they can grow up and change society to make it a much more inclusive society.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, 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 absolutely, yes. So, yeah, my last statement would be to all who against the acceptance of LGBTIQ individuals, and who to all who still want to do harm with our communities. I have only one message for you. Everyone want to be loved, and want to be loved about who they are. Want to be loved because we have different colors of our skins, different height, different taste of life, and because we are different in terms of like our gender identity or expressions, it doesn't mean that we are different from you. If I cut my wrist, I also have the red blood as you are too. So it show our humanity. It show our like human being, and we are equal. So it starts by accepting, like lowering your guard and seeing us as human being, but not seeing us as human being by forces us to be like force us to be or believe in your own faith when it's come to like gender norms, sexuality, but accept our human being in our own shades. That's my point. So we have different shades of our human being, which is called diversity. So we can create safe space by ensure that everyone live freely. Maybe if you can think of like live your life in our shoes, you might understand what does it mean to be like people with sexual and gender diversity in this society. Yes, and we are welcome you to be our alliance. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Nada. Thank you for sharing that heartwarming message. Thank you for joining us today. It was so good to hear about your knowledge, your experience, everything that's going on in Thailand currently. And thank you to everyone who has listened to this podcast. It's been a really good experience and a learning journey to learn about Nada's history and Thailand in general. And we hope it is useful for you to get inspired and to take action to improve the lives of trans communities and of the LGBTI plus young people everywhere. Thank you very much, and sending confidence to all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nada. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Nada. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode. In the meantime, please visit our website and social media to keep up to date about us and to join our activities. www.theglobal-center.org. Find us on Facebook at We Are the Global Center, on Instagram at The Global Center, and on Twitter at Global Center Ed.